focus on yourself and remember what the world made you forget? What if I told you that the tiredness you carry is not from your job, your relationships, or your age, but from the invisible weight of everything you have not let go of? What if I said the reason your life feels stuck is not because you are behind, but because you are bleeding? Not blood, but energy, confidence, clarity, trust. Every thought you revisit but never resolve. Every comparison you make without realizing. Every unspoken fear. Every silent performance. These are not small things. They are slow leaks. And eventually, even the strongest spirit will collapse under the pressure of what it refuses to release. There is a reason you feel numb after scrolling for an hour. A reason your breath shortens when you wake up and remember how much you have to prove. A reason you feel like something is always missing, even when nothing is wrong. And no, it is not because you are broken. It is because you have been looking outward for what only exists within. Welcome to Buddha Story. This is not just a channel. This is a journey back to what matters. Today, we are not going to give you 10 quick tips. We are going to do something far more radical. We are going to slow down. We are going to ask why you forgot who you are. And then we're going to walk you home. If that speaks to something in you, if you feel the truth in your bones, then take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Because here we do not chase perfection. We return to presence. And we are just getting started. Now breathe. Close your eyes if you want. Feel the space around you. Notice the one thing that never leaves, your awareness. Let us begin. There is a story they do not teach you in school. A story of a prince named Aryan who had everything: silk robes, golden bowls, dancing gardens. But what he did not have was peace. And so one night, while everyone slept, he left. Not to chase adventure, but to face what he had always feared. Outside the palace, Aryan saw things no prince was prepared for. A man dying, a woman aging, a child with a broken body. And then he saw something stranger still. A man with nothing, smiling. A monk who owned no home, wore no shoes, and yet walked with a calm that did not make sense. This, Aryan realized, was the beginning of something, but not a search, a stripping. He saw that the more you cling, the more you suffer. That the more you compare, the more you forget your own rhythm. That chasing happiness outside of you is like trying to catch the wind with a closed fist. So Aryan sat, and he watched, not the world, but his own mind. And he saw the leaks. This prince was not just a symbol of wealth. He was a mirror of you, of the part of you that has tried to be good enough, fast enough, strong enough, while secretly wondering why nothing ever feels quite right. But do you know what Aryan did next? He stopped. Not dramatically, not with fireworks. He just stopped believing that the answer was somewhere else. And that, right there, is the beginning of awakening. We think awakening means glowing, smiling, floating in peace. But sometimes it means lying on your floor, realizing you have lived 10 years for people who never truly saw you. It means crying in silence when no one claps. It means deleting the app that gives you fake validation. It means finally noticing the quiet voice that says, "This is not who I am," and then honoring it. There was a woman named Mira who lived in a small town. Her son died one morning without warning. She carried his body through every street, begging for help. Everyone shook their heads. "We are so sorry," they said, "but we too have lost someone." Mira ran for hours. Then a teacher told her, "Bring me 1 grain of rice from a house untouched by death." She searched, but there was no such house. By the time she returned, her grief had changed. She was still broken, but something was different. The question, why me, had become why not me. Her suffering did not vanish, but the comparison did. And in that space, something else could grow. Understanding, compassion, strength. This is the first truth. Comparison drains you because it detaches you from what is real. You were never meant to move at someone else's pace, speak with someone else's voice, wear someone else's skin. You were not meant to perform. You were meant to become. And becoming cannot be rushed. Think of how trees grow, roots first before rising. Think of how rivers carve through stone slowly, quietly. Now think of how you live, always reaching, rarely rooting. So what would it mean to stop? To stop chasing what is not yours. To stop pretending that exhaustion is normal. To stop measuring your life by what others seem to have. It would mean finally coming home. But home is not a place. It is a state of being. It is a return to your own breath, to your own rhythm. And from that rhythm, you begin to see clearly that the relationships you are keeping out of guilt are not love, that the arguments you are replaying are not worth your peace, that the validation you crave cannot replace the self-trust you lack. This is why you must focus on yourself, not to become selfish, but to become whole. Because when you are whole, you no longer need to prove anything. You simply live. Do you remember the story of Nalin, the man who hunted others to feel power? One day he chased a teacher who walked calmly ahead. Nalin screamed, "Why are you still running?" The teacher replied, "I have stopped. It is you who still runs." In that moment, Nalin understood. He was not chasing a man. He was running from himself. He dropped his weapon, and for the first time in years, he breathed without fear. That is what self-focus does. It does not make you untouchable. It makes you honest. So ask yourself now, where are you bleeding? What patterns are you repeating that no longer belong? What parts of you are starving while you feed the illusion? And more importantly, are you willing to stop? Before we move forward, I invite you to reflect. Here is a question I want you to answer in the comments. Which do you believe causes more suffering? A. Chasing a life that looks good on the outside but feels empty on the inside. B. Facing discomfort to build a life that feels real, even if no one claps. Write A or B in the comments below and tell us why. Because this is not just a video. This is a practice. And the practice begins now. Reclaim your power and let peace begin to lead. Somewhere deep within you is a well of energy you have forgotten how to drink from. Not because you are weak, not because you are broken, but because your attention has been pulled away from that inner source, leaked into thoughts, relationships, habits that no longer nourish the person you are becoming. We live in a world that teaches us to chase, to accumulate, to announce, to outperform. But the spiritual path, whether walked by monks or mothers, artists or wanderers, always brings us to one radical truth. What you feed grows, and what you neglect dies. When Leona, a once sought-after speaker, lost her voice to stress, doctors found no damage. It is psychological, they said. But what they really meant was, your spirit is screaming, and your mouth has gone silent, so you might finally listen. She had spent years pouring herself out in ways that looked successful. But inside, she had not felt present for a very long time. This is the hidden cost of distraction. It is not just the wasted time. It is the silent erosion of self-trust. Your energy, like your breath, is not infinite. It must be honored, not scattered. In the monastic traditions of the East, monks rise before dawn, not for punishment or productivity, but to claim the hour before the world makes demands. They sweep courtyards, not to impress, but to practice presence. They eat in silence to taste each bite, not rush toward the next. You may not live in a monastery, but the principle is the same. If you do not protect your first hour, the world will steal it from you. 1 hour. That is all it takes. One sacred hour where your body, mind, and spirit belong to you. You do not need a temple. You need a decision. Wake up, sit in stillness, move your body, watch your breath. Let your mind slow down before the day speeds up. And in that quiet space, ask yourself, what do I actually want? What is my path? Not theirs, not the world's, but mine. It is in that hour that your clarity will return. It is in that hour that your scattered energy begins to come home. Because true focus is not about control. It is about conservation. It is the practice of saying no, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Saying no to conversations that lead nowhere. Saying no to relationships that require you to shrink. Saying no to mental loops that only stir old pain. There is a story from the life of Master Ryosen, a wandering sage known for his sharp insight. A student once asked, "How can I stop giving energy to things that drain me?" Ryosen handed him a bamboo bucket with holes in the bottom and told him to carry water across the field. The student returned, wet and confused. "The water keeps leaking." Ryosen nodded. "Just like your thoughts, you carry what cannot be held. That is why you are always tired." This is how life is for most people. We pour our spirit into holes, unconscious behaviors, unresolved stories, unspoken boundaries, and then wonder why there is nothing left for what truly matters: our peace, our creativity, our presence. And the most dangerous leaks are not the loud ones. They are the quiet agreements you keep out of guilt, the habits you excuse because they are familiar, the promises you break to yourself in silence, thinking no one notices. But you notice. Every time you do not follow through, you chip away at the foundation of self respect. Every time you rehearse a version of yourself that no longer fits, you delay the arrival of the one you are meant to become. But the moment you begin to pull back your energy, to unplug from the stories, the patterns, the noise, you start to feel different. Not immediately lighter, but clearer. You begin to realize what you were carrying was never truly yours. You see the difference between genuine connection and emotional obligation, between effort and alignment, between being liked and being true. And with that realization, a quiet power begins to rise. The kind that does not need applause to feel real. The kind that holds a boundary without a speech. The kind that wakes up early, not because it has to, but because it refuses to abandon itself again. This is not self-improvement. This is self-respect. It is the sacred act of reclaiming your attention from everything that feeds on your absence. And as you become more present with yourself, you begin to make different choices. You stop answering calls that leave you drained. You stop posting just to be seen. You stop proving, fixing, chasing, because now your energy belongs to something greater, your own becoming. Remember the story of Eshan, a quiet farmer whose fields were once the most fertile in the village. Over time, he noticed his crops withering. No matter how much water or labor he poured in, the soil seemed tired. So he stopped. He dug deep. And what he found was a network of roots, tangled with weeds he had never seen growing, slow intrusions stealing nutrients for years. He cleared them out. It took weeks. But when he planted again, the soil responded. This is what inner work is. You dig beneath the surface. You look at the patterns you inherited, the beliefs you never questioned, the masks you wear out of habit. And you choose to release what no longer serves the ground you are cultivating. It is not glamorous, but it is sacred drop of energy you recover becomes fuel for what matters. Your art, your clarity, your peace, your strength. And perhaps most importantly, your self-trust. Not the loud kind, not the kind that brags, but the quiet certainty that says, I will show up for me, even if no one sees it, even if no one applauds. Because that is the kind of trust no one can give you. It is built in silence, one decision at a time, 1 hour at a time, one boundary at a time. And with each repetition, your foundation strengthens. So when life comes with its storms, and it will, you do not crumble. You do not vanish. You remain. Not because life got easier, but because you got steadier. That is how peace begins to lead. Not in the absence of difficulty, but in the presence of integrity. And now you are ready, not to perform, but to live fully, present, unshaken, aligned. Let the journey continue.